The basement. I never liked our basement. Even as a young child, I felt an uneasiness whenever I had to go down those wooden stairs. I could never put my finger on why. During the day, rays of sunlight streamed in through the small ground-level windows, illuminating the concrete floor and cinder block walls. But at night, it was a different story. My parents had finished the basement shortly after we moved into the old farmhouse. It became the designated playroom for my younger brother and me, but I always tried to avoid it after sunset. Something about the way the shadows crept along the walls unsettled me. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling did little to penetrate the darkness in the corners. I swore sometimes the shadows moved of their own accord, even when nothing else stirred. One night, my mother sent me downstairs to grab a board game for a family game night. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, peering down into the dark unknown. My hands tightened on the wooden railing, heart already picking up speed. After a deep breath, I flicked on the light and descended one slow step at a time. The bare bulbs hummed and flickered overhead. I kept my eyes focused straight ahead as I reached the concrete floor. I hurried over to the metal shelving unit along the far wall which held all our games and toys. As I perused the selections, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The sensation of being watched settled over me like a heavy weight. I whirled around, expecting to find my brother ready to jump out and scare me. But there was nothing except empty basement behind me. Shadows danced across the walls from the swaying light bulb. I turned back to the shelves, grabbed the first box I saw, and spun around to rush upstairs. That's when I saw it. In the far back corner lurked a shadow darker than the rest. My heart leapt into my throat as the shapeless mass oozed across the floor, closer and closer. Icicles of fear stabbed down my spine, rooting me in place. A rancid smell assaulted my nostrils, like rotting meat left in the summer sun. Bile burned the back of my throat. Still, I could not look away as the writhing darkness dragged itself toward me. A distant pounding finally broke through my paralysis. My mom calling me from upstairs. Without another glance, I broke for the stairs, taking them two at a time. My own shadow flickered wildly in the dim light as I fled. I slammed the door shut behind me and collapsed against it. My mother gave me a strange look as I thrust the game box at her with shaking hands. I begged off game night by faking a stomachache. Lying awake that night, my eyes continuously drifted to my closed bedroom door, half expecting inky tendrils to creep underneath. Eventually, I slipped into restless sleep, my dreams haunted by a shapeless mass chasing me through an endless dark maze. I avoided the basement as much as possible after that night. I would come up with any excuse not to go down there if sent by my parents. My fear grew into a nearly crippling phobia as the years went by. My brother never saw or felt anything strange in the basement. He would tease me relentlessly about being afraid of the dark whenever I refused to accompany him downstairs. I suffered his taunts and teasing in silence. Anything was better than setting foot in that basement again. Until that one sweltering summer night during a terrible thunderstorm. The power had cut out, leaving the house in complete darkness. I sat rigid in bed, ears straining into the dark, waiting for the comforting sound of the air conditioner kicking back on. The rumblings of thunder overhead did little to drown out the pounding of my heart. I don't know what made me get up and leave the safety of my bedroom. Maybe it was the suffocating heat. Maybe it was the anxiety swirling inside me from the dark and the storm. Before I even realized what I was doing, I stood at the top of the basement stairs, door flung wide open. The smell hit me first, that stomach-turning stench of rot assaulting my senses. I froze, every nerve ending alight with fear. A flash of lightning illuminated the descent just long enough to outline a hulking shape at the bottom of the steps. Thunder boomed, rattling the door in its frame. In the split second of light, I saw it. The undulating dark mass from my childhood nightmares made real. Oily shadows dripped from its shapeless form, spreading across the floor and up the walls like liquid darkness. Then everything went black again. Something shifted below. A low, guttural groan echoed up the stairs, barely audible over the storm. The sound propelled me into action. I slammed the door with trembling hands and raced back to the safety of my bed. I hunkered under the covers, shuddering despite the oppressive heat. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me and I drifted off into a fitful sleep. The next morning, bright sunshine poured in through my bedroom window as if the previous night's storm had never happened. I sat up slowly, heart pounding as the memories came flooding back. A dream. Just a dream. I clung to that futile hope as I made my way downstairs on wobbly legs. My parents sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee. My mother greeted me with a smile which quickly faded to a look of concern. "Honey, are you feeling all right? You look ill," she said, pressing a hand to my clammy forehead. I opened my mouth to tell her I was fine, just a night of bad dreams. But then I saw it, sitting in the corner by the basement door, a game box, the same one I had grabbed in panic all those years ago. Impossible. I had never gone down there again after that first encounter. Before I could stop myself, I was across the kitchen, flinging open the door. The empty void of the basement staircase yawned open before me. A cool draft sighed up from the depths, carrying on it the faint but unmistakable stench of decay.